Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Carnarvon Ordinary Meeting of Council, Tuesday the 24th of May 2022. Great to see a number of people here. We'll get straight into it. Attendances, apologies and approved leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Langley and our CEO, Mrs. Andrea Selby, and I must welcome Mr. Wilson, who is filling in at the moment. So this is his first meeting as the CEO, so we're very gentle today. There's no leave of absence. Okay. Declarations of interest. We've got a few of those. Interest, I have an interest in item 7.3.3, Carnarvon Growers Association request for financial assistance for a conference and regional showcase. I'm a financial member of the Carnarvon Growers Association and the extent of my interest is financial. I have an interest from Councillor Luke Skender on the exact same one for the same reason. I also have an interest from Councillor Ferreira on this for the same reasons, item 7.3.3, Carnarvon Growers and financial member. I have an interest from Councillor Luke Skender on item 7.4.1, temporary closure of the Nalu-Warra coastal track. The nature of his interest is impartiality as the co-author of this agenda item with his partner. Another one from Councillor Skender on item 7.4.2, the budget variation approval resealing of Olivia Terrace Car Park and Festival Road. It is an impartiality interest. The author is Councillor Skender's partner. Another one from Councillor Skender, item 7.4.3, budget variation preparing the Australian Communities Program, which is the flood preparation project. The interest is impartiality, the author is his partner. I also have one from Councillor Cottrell, 7.3.2, scheme amendment. The interest is a proximity interest as Councillor Cottrell leases a site on lot 52. That is it. Councillors, I'll just remind you, if you realise you have an interest in an item as we go through today's meeting, let us know as soon as you realise that. Thank you. Public question time. Questions taken on notice from previous meeting. There are none. So straight into public question time itself. I do have two questions here from Mr. Brogan. Did you want to ask some questions, Mr. Brogan? Or would you like me to read them?
I think I've already asked them.
Okay,
so I put them in advance.
Okay, so I'm happy to read them out. So the following questions were submitted by Mr. Brogan, Coral Bay. Question 1. An amendment to the town planning scheme was put forward to allow workers' accommodation to be placed on land designated for tourism purposes. How is this progressing and when is it likely to be proclaimed? The answer is the proposed amendments to TPS 13 are on the agenda for today's council meeting. And if supported by council, the amendments then go back to the government for ministerial approval. This process may take 3 to 6 months due to modifications to the amendments. Question 2. We applied to the Crown to purchase lot 64 in September 2021. The land is currently zoned for use as workers' accommodation, but have made very little progress. Can council assist in facilitating the release of lot 64 to provide accommodation for workers in Coral Bay? The answer is council have assisted in facilitating the release of lot 64 workers accommodation through adopting town planning scheme 13 with the use permitted on lot 64. Council will assist further with the required development and planning approvals that will arise once land tenure has been resolved. There's the answers. Are there any further questions from the public? Can you stand up and state your name?
Joe Easton.
Thank you.
Resident. A key component of the 2004-2014 Coral Bay Settlement Structure Plan was independent housing and separation of workers from tourists. The document's quite complex, it's fairly hard, and we only really got a copy of it on Friday or Saturday or whatever. These changes, will they actually achieve that outcome? Because they were serious desires contained within that document.
Yep.
What is the current situation regarding the waste disposal site? When will we have a new one? It's probably the easiest thing, rather than it's in a budget or it's this or it's that or whatever. You know, there's just a screaming need for infrastructure, footpaths, parking, all that sort of stuff. So I guess some of it will be contained in budgets for the future, but you know, just exactly when. And I know, and I'm encouraging, I suppose, a new applicant for a mobile trading licence. And what is the current policy being used by council? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. In answer to your question regarding item 7.3.2, yes. We're dealing with that today, and I think that may clarify the situation in that regard a lot more once council's made a decision today. The waste site, we are currently endeavouring to get the Biondo people on site on the proposed new site to give us approval to actually use that site. So once that occurs, we should be very close to getting that action. Council is acutely aware of the need for that to occur. Where are we now? We have the infrastructure. That's if you could, please. Thank you.
Through the chair, so we do have some funding under the West Australian Bicycle Network program. Officers are meeting today with consultants for that's for a path out to the boat ramp, footpath.
From where to where?
From basically intersection of French and Banksia Drive to the boat ramp. And so that project is in the budget for the delivery will be in the next financial year. The planning and design is commencing with someone on site today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. And as for the mobile trading licence, what policy is currently being used? There is no policy currently being used. We're using the local laws to assess that application. Thank you. Are there any further questions? Mr. Brogan.
Would it be possible to, as a condition of approving the AC application, for change in the ruling on what they can use the land for? We would expect them to facilitate releasing land for the chip, because that is a major necessity for Coral Bay, and I understand it's being held indefinitely by the AC. Can you do some horse trading, in other words?
I would prefer not to answer that right now. I'll have to take that question on those.
It's just a suggestion.
Yes, I understand. Yes. Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council on 26th of May 2022. Councillor Skenner, thank you. Councillor Masden. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Receiving of the minutes of the Gascoyne Zone meeting 22nd of April and the Community Growth Fund meeting 13th of May. Councillor Masden. Councillor Skenner. Those in favour? Aye. Thank you, councillors. Unanimous, Mr. Hill, thank you. Announcements by the President without discussion. Yes, I do have a bit to say. First up, Mr. Perry, who has been with us for quite some time. it's his last day today, and I'd really like, on behalf of the council, Mr. Perry, thank you so much for your efforts over the last few years. It's been wonderful working with you, and we wish you the very best in the future. I know Mr. Nielsen would like to do something, so.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Mr. Perry, Andrea Selby, who's unfortunately not available today, did ask to pass on her sincere thank you for your assistance and your work, and on behalf of the other staff, I would like to do that as well. Thank you very much for your time, your energy, and enthusiasm, and we wish you all the very best in your new endeavours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, with that, we have presentations, petitions and memorials. We have 2 presentations this morning. I'd like to ask Hayden from Greenfield, if you'd like to jump up, mate, and do yours, please.
Good morning, everyone. Just for a bit of background, so I work for Greenfield Technical Services, consultant for the Shire of Carnarvon, assisting with flood damage reinstatement works. So there's a major flood event early last year. So we've been 14 months after the event. We've helped go through a funding submission process to get funds through the disaster recovery funding arrangement process, managed by the Department of Fire and Emergency Services. So a bit of an update of the current status. So in the bullet points, so last council meeting, we discussed the restatement works at the Medallia Crossing, or the Manila River Crossing on Manila Linden Road. So it was that afternoon, we got the final approval to proceed with the restatement works on that crossing. So that involved reinstatement of all cracked concrete slab and undermined material. A portion of that has to come out of the project contingency, which is approved by VPs, and it's still reimbursable and manageable within the budget that we've got. Update on claims, so all emergency works have been reimbursed, and we've submitted another $210,000 worth of claims to VPs for approval. I've attached on the back again a bit of a claim summary which shows how many claims we've submitted and what's outstanding. So there's a figure showing the cost being held by the Shire while we wait for reimbursement as we're starting works. That will jump up significantly as we're starting works, but also bear in mind that as a part of the process we're able to invoice 20% of the total reinstatement cost. So we've got just over $2 million of buffer before those actual costs being held by the Shire. In terms of the reinstatement works themselves, so Quadrio Earth Moving, they started on the 13th of May. They started on Quabanalu Road. Very quickly they finished all the actual works on Quabanalu and Beach Road, and have been working all along Blowholes Road, shoulder reinstatement there, and they're on the One Tree Point Road and looking at Bugawara Road now. So they made a start to well before they chipped off a couple of the small roads and getting into a couple of other roads with a bit more work on them as we speak. Then Earth Moving, so they're commencing next week on the 30th. There's a bit of capital works on the Manila Linden Road for them to complete first. So that's around SLK 38 mark. So there'll be full rehab of a short section of road there, and then after that they'll just go back to the very start of Manila Linden Road, go the whole way up the road and all the side roads for the reinstatement of that. So they're on track to make a start this week. See some action very soon. Exmouth Civil for the concrete floodway crossing on the Manila Linden Road. So they're also intending to start on next Monday, the 30th. They're mobilising a few pieces of gear this week, ready to be right into it next week. There's also a portion of capital works involved with that project, so they'll be doing the reinstatement of the crossing and flood damage, and then there's an upstream edge wall that's included as that under capital works. They'll be putting a big focus on getting that portion of capital works done first to fall in line with the financial year and funding requirements that come along with that. So far, we're on track to meet those dates. Onto the waterfall, so the floor drilling's been going on. That just started at the start of Manili London Road and been working their way out. They haven't had the most successful start in works drilling at the first section on Manili London Road. It's an area that is very sparse for water. We've have managed to get a few wet bores, but also got quite a few dry bores that have been drilled as well while progressing out there. Where the drill is at now, kind of at the far end of Manili London Road and the side roads out there, our hydrogeologists and the driller are a lot more confident we will have a lot more success out at the end of the road. So we're expecting to hear a lot more positive feedback in terms of the drilling very soon, but I'll keep you updated on how that's progressing. To do another update next month for how that went. Certainly looking promising and start to go up to. Well, the last point, so there's a budget for the dry bore drilling included, which the Shire has already allocated. So we've used about 20% of this budget so far on dry bores. It's well under our predicted per dry bore budget, but obviously still not a favourable result, but we'll keep tracking us against our budget. Actually know if we're going to see that or not at the moment. We're looking for one to be well under what we've allocated for that. And then the final page is got a claim summary just to see exactly where we're up to with reimbursement. That's about all I've got. I'll spend the time catching up with the actual crew QEM later this afternoon and see how they're going. But supervisor we've got on the ground with them has certainly given me good feedback about the work they're doing. See that, and if anyone's got any questions, then go ahead.
Councillor Fuller.
So, as to the Medallia crossing,
Yeah.
The reinstatement, good work. We're looking forward to that. We'll be proud. The problem I understand was some infrastructure at the beginning for the upstream protection.
Yeah.
Is that included in this project, or is that an enhancement therefore outside the gambit of this, or if we got permission to make sure the problem doesn't reoccur?
Yeah, so that was included. It's two separate projects. So the main project that we're looking after is the flood damage reinstatement, which is put back exactly how it was, but also managing at the same time from a separate source of funding is the upstream edge wall and upstream rock protection. So it's the same contractor doing the same work at the same time. They have to keep it as measurable, separable portions and separately invoiced. So one bill goes to flood damage, other bill goes to the improvement works. But yes, once they're finished, it will certainly be of had the improvement works undertaken and a lot less likely to see the same thing happen again.
I won't hold you to exactly, but how many bores on the dry ones have we used?
Top five dry balls so far.
And sorry, and the ones that are partially wet, I don't imagine we get covered for those. The ones we don't actually get covered unless they're operational. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've got a separate cost allocation that the Shire's made for dry bore drilling. So that's what we have to dig into every time we have a dry bore. So we have to track that budget separately for the flood damage one. How much dry bore drillings are here.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but is this due to the fact that Dwyer have insisted or ruled that you stay out of the tributaries and not allowed to drill anywhere in the Gascoigne or in the Linden River or near the river system and all the tributaries, which basically means you're fighting with fucking on about trying to find water?
Yeah, that is a factor affecting it. certainly, of where we can drill. One of the main objectives was to get water right next to the road. That was the brief that we put up, because we know where there was already other water, but it's a matter of carting it further. So the whole objective is to reduce the amount of travel time. So certainly that has been an impact we've been able to.
Is there anything that council can do to help go back to the department? Request some common sense for you.
We can have a look at that. That's managed by a large one. The Department of Water and Environmental Regulation would be a very lengthy process to that change.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you very much, Hayden. Thank you. Mr. Noel Bridge, you've got a presentation.
Thank you, Eddie. Just want to acknowledge people in the room and the traditional owners of Wayne country, being the Wayne people. I'm sure, just in response to one of the questions from the floor earlier, that they'd be happy to take a contribution from the largest waste producer in Coral Bay. So I'll bring that to their attention, Bill. Maybe they can do a deal with you as well. Just want to thank you for allowing me some time today, Eddie, and the council. It's been a while. We very much appreciate all the work that's gone in by your officers, including your CEO, who's not here today, unfortunately, to address what we thought was very much a basic scheme amendment proposed for us, which is to change one word from the definition of holiday accommodation as applied to Lot 308. And obviously, since last year, we've made some really good strides. I think we shared that with council on a number of occasions. We've got deals in place with RAC, with Grove, some other local business owners with some lots that are up to try to survey acquisition from us. And we're in discussions with the Progress Association and also with another major landowner who's been reasonable to deal with. Since then, of course, we've seen the process unfold with what the state has done to a basic scheme amendment. And you've got to be a road scholar really to go through all this. It's complex, it's convoluted, and it takes a lot. We worked through it. A couple of we just got on Friday night as well, so to see what's come through, it is complex. So I've been asked to give this presentation by our planning consultants, Harley Dykstra, and just to reflect some of their views and in terms of the variations that have been put forward, A, by the state in this advertised modification, but B, the subsequent additional modifications that have now arisen from the process that's been undertaken by your Shire officers, and also the fact that there's substantive changes being proposed to the Coral Bay Settlement Structure Plan. That seems to be back to front to us. So the Coral Bay Settlement Structure Plan, as everyone knows, took an inordinate amount of time and money and resources. And this scheme took well over 5 or 6 years to construct. And within the space of a few months, a basic scheme amendment has now resulted in what is a highly convoluted, complex response briefly. Our key interest has always been to see Coral Bay reach its full potential as a destination point and to be part of that process. The strong advice from our advisors is to recommend to council that it take stock of the proposed modifications, draw breath, and to undertake a review of this particular mechanism for controlling accommodation types within Coral Bay. And in doing so, I take this opportunity to see if there's a more simple, achievable, and equitable mechanism that can be developed for the future of Coral Bay. The proposed modifications and amendments, as we said, create more questions than answers. It's complicated, not concise, and simple. It is definitely not equitable, and it creates more costs for council, I believe, and we believe, in the future. And we wonder whether councils has considered the costs involved to administer and enforce it and has not been demonstrated how in practice this will be enforced. We already note that the council is struggling to enforce the current scheme and the previous scheme. With respect to Lot 308, specifically, I've been asked to share the following plans. 1. The suggestion to include an additional provision under restricted use number 3, namely provision number 12, that seeks to restrict the land available for accommodation purposes, is not supported by that. This was not previously included in zoning and restricted use provisions relating to our land. All we were doing was seeking to add or clarify the holiday accommodation definition in the scheme. And now we're left with a whole bunch of additional controls that were not previously required. Further, the requirement for a local structure plan to guide future land use and development on Lot 308 will deal with and assess the particular matters identified within the proposed new special provisions number 12, and thereby having this provision in the scheme is unnecessary. The proposed addition of a further provision number 13 with restricted use number 3 related to developments on lots less than 1 hectare being required to be sewered is an additional restriction that was not previously imposed and seeks to place in a statute something that is already in the state government policy. The government sewage policy requires in any event that development and subdivision of lots less than 1 hectare within a sewer sensitive area ought to be connected to reticulated sewage. The State Health Department is the custodian of this government sewage policy, along with the Department of Lands and Heritage, and it is not necessary for the town planning scheme to double up on this policy. Further, the policy does not include exceptions to the rule. Sorry, the policy doesn't also include exceptions to the rule. That's the state policy, where certain criteria can be complied with. However, by putting the requirement in the statute of the scheme, it removes the ability for the landowner to work within state government sewage policy that complies. And thirdly, finally, our planning consultant overarching suggestion for the Shire is to review this particular control mechanism for correlating accommodation and make it a more simple scheme mechanism. And we suggested something that was dismissed. However, when going through the list of modifications that have now been put to council, and this agenda items for people here today, the list of modifications suggested by the planning department to discourage this list is quite exhaustive, as anyone who would have read the schedules will now know, and would most likely require some form of re-advertising of the amendments in here. Hence, on that basis, we would reiterate our recommendation to undertake, to draw correct and take this opportunity to see if we can make a more simple, achievable, enforceable, and equitable mechanism. So, thank you, Ed. We see this as a complex, modified scheme of developments, which further heighten expectations on Shire in dealing with the enforcement in Coral Bay. I would finish off and say to the council, what's being proposed simple and enforceable? Is what's being proposed equitable? Is it neutral? And is it concise and clear? And our strong advice would be to take a restock on what's being presented today. Thank you. Happy to take questions if there's any.
Thank you, Mr. Bridge. Councillors?
So, for clarity, Mr. Bridge, are you suggesting the council vote this motion down in its entirety? Is that what
we are saying take the proposed modifications that are now before the council for this deliberation today. That it takes a deep breath, steps back. It considers the complexity of the amendments that are ostensibly around works accommodation that have been thrust upon the council by the state in its advertising process, and reconsider the fact that as well included in that schedule is a back-to-front mechanism. They're trying to rewrite a Coral settlement structure plan in 2014 and then make that fit with a proposed new scheme. So yes, we say do not adopt this. We're happy with the adoption. We acknowledge the work that was done on the base scheme amendment with TAP universal support. But in regard to the overall planning associated with accommodations throughout Coral Bay, there's got to be a simpler model, and that model should be worked out, and we would be requesting that we work with the council to do that.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, we'll refer you to the departmental reports. Governance, item 7.1. Move it, please. Councillor Angela, thank you. Councillor Stanley. Is there any discussion?
Sure, if I may. Thank you. Sure, if I may, for the benefit of the gallery, these are procedural matters. They've already been approved by the, it's a matter of record. The building surveyors have issued the licenses, so that's why it looks like it's not much to pay. That's the reason for it. It's already been approved. It's to go through the minutes to get it sealed. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, councillors, if there is no debate, such that's adopted unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.1.2, Shire Revenue Strategy Council. Councillor Nasley, your second. Councillor Vanderloo.
I'll open the debate by speaking for this motion, and just as a bit of background, for those in the room, the revenue financial position of the Shire was something that this council identified as being something that required a lot of attention when voted in or when I was voted in 2019. It's taken a couple, almost 3 years to get to this point. We've got a draft revenue strategy ready to be presented to the community for their observation and feedback. So I'd like to say I'm very pleased to be able to present this strategy, very pleased at the effort the staff have put in coming forward with these suggestions. I think they're good suggestions and something that the region help shape the future of this council for years to come. So I encourage you to look at it, provide us with feedback, and help us address the shortcomings we've had financially historically.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderloo, and I echo the words of Councillor Vanderloo to the staff because they put massive effort into putting this together, especially our CEO, who's unfortunately not here today. He's done a wonderful job of it. Councillors, any further comments or debate? That motion is adopted unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Item 7.2.1, Creditors Report, Council Item and Delegation, Councillor Vanderloo. Councillor Skender. Councillors, is there any debate? That's adopted unanimously. Item 7.2.2, draft financial activity statement. Councillors, no debate comments? That's adopted unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, item 7.3.1. Thank you. Wish to move the motion.
Yes, Mr. President, I do just move taking motion and the office has spent some considerable time and effort in putting this all together. So very simple.
Councillor Fordham?
Record second.
It's got to put it up first. Then what was issued. Could run around.
Councillor Matthews, put your motion forward, please.
That no mobile traders license be issued in Coral Bay until the Coral Bay settlement structure plan has been reviewed by the government.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a second for that motion?
Foreshadowed motion.
No, it's a new motion. It's a motion. So, Councillor, do I have a second for that motion? And Councillors, can I ask you, I've just got a message. Could you speak up, please? I think it's not big. Thank you.
That no mobile traders license be issued in Coral Bay until the settlement structure plan has been reviewed by the state government.
Councillors, do I have a second? Councillor, would you like to speak to your motion?
reason that I've moved this term motion is that it basically leads into the next item as well. But the settlement structure plan that's been reviewed for several years, we find this demand or application coming through. It takes a considerable officer's time. Then you have an idea of where can these people go if they're allowed to set up. Then becomes an issue of those who are paying full tote odds in a commercial area and those who are paying for a mobile trader's licence. And the Shire seems to be the ones in the middle of all this when really it's not straightforward. So therefore a review of the Coral Bay Settlement Structure Plan and part of this mechanism being there is obviously a demand here or a desire. So that's what I would suggest to save the officers time, energy and the angst of the people who have written into the Shire and the Shire councillors that we just put a stop on thing until the state actually pulls their finger out and reviews the structure plan for Coral Bay. That's why I put forward that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Masman. Is there any speaking against the motion or a shadow motion?
I'd like to foreshadow a motion, which is the officer's recommendation, almost as it stands, but with the removal of points 5 and 6 to require the applicant to be a CDCA.
Do I have a second to it? No, I don't think that. We'll deal with the first motion, standard motion first. So, councillors,
And speak against the motion. To wait for a review, restructure, revamp, redraft, reapproval of the settlement structure plan is something to take 10 years. Not going to see that as being a way of actually a good contingency to put in place, that we're not going to consider mobile trader applications until a document and something of that amount of time is carried out. And I think that setting that precedent could see us in a position where Carnarvon, or in this case Coral Bay, would be missing out on applications for beneficial services to be provided to the community. So I urge people to vote against that. Councillors to vote against that motion. The Councillor Maslin's put forward and consider the motion as it stands. As the officers are written.
Councillor Bagley, are there any further speakers for the motion?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to speak for the motion. It's a bit more of a drastic approach, but I think because of the complexities in the area and the need for more management or review of management of the area and the history, I feel it's the best way to go about it until we can fully assess the whole situation and maybe in turn have more of a policy or have it included in the policy also to assess these applications. I think that's the most straightforward way of dealing with it at this stage.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers against the motion? Councillor Ford.
I thank Councillor Maslan for his succinct approach. However, I concur with Councillor Vanderver in that I don't think we can really interfere with the economics of society. Licensing conditions of trade, for sure, that's our role. But whether something is competition on free market, and I understand that people have to get sort of barley's at rent where people were paying rates and paying rent at considerable operational costs, and the street traders were coming in front and simply benefiting on the back of Kruger's reputation to sell their wares. And that was unfair, and in the end, the Indonesian police just threw their wares on the truck. I understand that. However, there are considerable restrictions and proposals that Councillor Van has put up. And I think with those restrictions as to restraints of trade that are placed on this particular licence will be sufficient to overcome those economic benefits, i.e. cheap rent, if you like, unfair trade and competition. So, whilst I concur with Councillor Maslin's motion, I suggest that we vote it down and go back to the stance with the restrictions.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Is there any speakers against the motion? Is there any further speakers for the motion? If there are no further speakers, would you like to close the debate? Councillor Matthew.
I would like to close the debate, and I respect the council position on this. I know it may seem to be quite a drastic review, but as I said, it seems to be that there's a lot of time and energy put into these things, and it causes quite a great amount of angst amongst the community for a reason. I would also just like to make comment that regardless of how this motion goes today, is that we do have considerable problems with compliance within Coral Bay, and the staff work very, very hard. I'm talking about a ranger that's here, and she's a ranger. She deals with a range of issues. So I urge the community, either way, whichever this goes, is that the ranger deal with a range of jobs, and anything that's got to do with the Shire, directly contact our CEO and staff, but just to let her deal with the Shire, not range of issues, just the Shire issues.
Thank you, Councillor Maslin. With that, councillors, I'll stand a motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against?
No. Vote recorded, please, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, we now have item 7.3.2, scheme amendment number 1, local planning scheme 13, holiday accommodation, Coral Bay. Councillor, thank you. Councillor Coffey will lead to proximity interest. Councillor, I would like to move the officer's recommendation with a further dot point, it's the recommendation, dot point 6, which will be to resolve to request state government initiate a review of the Coral Bay settlement structure plan, and also in the change of proposed modifications to specified additional use 1, page 78 of the schedule of additional modifications, I propose that it now read 1. Modify Schedule 1 specified additional use to land in the local reserves and scheme area number 4 by changing the condition to read as follows. 2 and 2-1. The number of overnight visitors inclusive of incidental workers and a dependent family is restricted to 280. A structure plan shall be prepared in accordance with Part 4 of the deemed provisions for the whole of the land, in brackets lot 64 and the adjoining portion of lot 501. The structure plan shall spatially define the location of caravan, workforce accommodation, caravan parking and camping ground uses. Number 3, notwithstanding other clauses within the scheme, workforce accommodation is to be classed as an I use. It must be demonstrated that approval of the use will support the predominant use. Schedule 2 of the modifications, Coral Bay Settlement Structure Plan. Number 5, 7.33, the change I'm proposing is to modify point 2 to designate unallocated Crown land lot 64 on plan 30121 and part unallocated Crown land on lot 501 on plan P 57358, approximately 2.5 hectares for caravan park, camping ground and workforce accommodation. Thank you, Councillor Maslin. And reasons for those changes is quite simple. A change to the proposed modified provision is to ensure there is consistency across the proposed incidental workforce accommodation throughout all lots in Coral Bay, and the change to the schedule of modification of the correlation structure plan is for the same reason, is to make those all lots consistent with each other. And that way we can move forward with the comfort. Councillors, is there any speakers against that motion? Any further speakers for the motion?
Speak for the motion. I think the Shire President summed that up in regards to the consistency comment made. But I also understand these documents are very complicated, very complex to read. The town plan and stuff will take my head off to your step. Yeah, around that. So I'll speak for the motion, and more or less it's more of an emphasis again to push for the state to review the Coral Bay settlement structure plan, because we are an advantage over so much. So it's time for staff to move that back to the state level.
Thank you, Councillor Mattson. Are there any speakers against the motion? Any further speakers for the motion, Councillor?
Sir, I'll put this counter argument. Basically, because of the request that was originally made, that every time we try to simplify these systems, they become more complex. And whilst I understand the idea is to simplify it, the question is, will it become even more complex? So, I honestly don't quite know what the solution is. I fear it's going to go on for much longer. So, approach to the state is probably a good idea, but I have to put the counter argument.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Further speakers for or against the motion? With that, I'll close the debate with, I absolutely understand what you're saying, Councillor Fuller, and this has been a long-term issue. But due to what is clearly changes in the visitation to Coral Bay, which is ever increasing, the changes in the requirements for workforce accommodation, which is ever increasing, the demand for commercial land is ever increasing. I think it's impacting every single business in this town, and it is a town. It's not a normalised town, but it is a town, and we're trying to apply normalised planning on something that is not normal due to the state government's requirement to restrict. They don't want people permanently living in Coral Bay. It is a tourism node, effectively, but it's actually a town. And we have the enviable task of applying town planning schemes and rules over something that isn't normal. I'm not saying people are not normal in Coral Bay. I'm just saying it is a huge problem. I see us by making these modifications to the scheme applies a consistent ruling across all those lots that have workers' accommodation, caravan park operations, camping operations. It is consistent. So that's the message to the state government. We need to be consistent, and we need that, we desperately need that review of the Coral Bay settlement structure plan, which drives everything that happens in Coral Bay. So with that, councillors, I would ask that you support this motion. Thank you. And I'll put it to the vote. All those in
So
favour?
can we just have a moment to suck on the thing?
Take a moment, Councillor Thornton. We move on. Sorry, Councillors. All in favour? Get those against? No. Thank you, councillors. We'll move right along. Item 7.3. Councillor Coppell, sorry. That would have been my last tip. Councillors, item 7.33, I have an interest in that being financial item for me. Oh, sorry, thank you. Councillor Coughlin, the motion is put with a couple of modifications and a dot point added to the actual motion itself, and 2 modifications to the proposed modified provisions and the Carnarvon settlement structure and schedule modifications, which I shall show you. With that, Councillor Maslow, the floor is yours. Thank you.
This is okay. Mark,
Mr. Maslin, may I draw your attention to the state of the chamber?
Yes, may, Councillor. Yes. Okay, item 7.3.3, Carnarvon Grove Association request for financial assistance to the conference regional showcase. Due to the fact that we've had councillors leave the room due to the financial interest in the matter, and we no longer have a quorum, that this motion basically dead in the water. So can I ask the council to so probably there is not enough to be a quorum, so that's
Thank you, Councillor Maslin. You scare them all out.
yeah. I think I'll vote out.
Item 7.4.1, temporary closure of the Carnarvon close to track. I move the please. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Maslin. Councillor Phillips, would you like that?
Indeed. Draw your attention that the statutory limitations on road closures are considerable. Unless you dig a set of road and close it, it stays open. It is onus on the local government is to have the road open, not closed. And this section of road is closed with the physical fact that it's the weather has cut off a piece of the road, and it's a requirement if it's more than 3 months for it to be closed, kept the closure. The engineer can close it at any time for repairs. However, once it exceeds 3 months, it has to be approved in the chamber, and that is what this item refers to. So it will be for the next 3 months, or until the road is passable, whichever comes. I recommend to the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Ready to speak against the motion?
I want to speak against the motion. Oh, sorry, I've got a question.
You may.
Okay. Mr. President, it refers to recent track inspection in the, and I apologise, this was probably discussed it yesterday, it's a general comment. Recent track inspection, how recent was that track inspection? And regular track inspections to monitor the status of the road. I ask how regularly they'll be proposing that. And can I confirm that once the road is passable, there will be no resolution required to open the road to the other the road under normal operation because we will not see a motion regarding the closure of the Carnarvon road again unless.
So through the chair, so if as the motion reads, extend the temporary closure for a maximum of 3 months or until the track is trafficable. So once it's, we expect and it's trafficable, the road will be open. It will not have to come back to council for an opening. Okay. It would need to come back to council if that temporary closure needs to extend for a further period. Thanks.
Thank you. Any speakers against it? Any speakers for it?
Yeah, I'd like to speak for the motion, and also I am aware that there are people that are actually using that track already, and to mitigate or reduce, we would like that the damage that they could be doing in regards to going wide or onto the beach. Would like to request or suggest that, but if possible, we could do those inspections maybe bi-monthly, if possible.
Thank you, Councillor Methil. Speak for the motion. Any further speakers against the motion? Speak for the motion. Councillor Fulham, would you like to stand?
No, sorry, right.
So you close the debate. Thank you, Councillor. All right. That's unanimous. Thank you, Mrs. Stewart. Councillor item 7.4.2. Motion for variation of legal receiver and councillors. Thank you. Councillors, do I have a motion for variation? Yes. Councillor Mandel. Councillors, is there any debate on this item? Being no debate, I'll declare that as adopted unanimously. Item 7.4.3, budget variation, preparing change community program project. Councillor Skender's an interest in this item, being impartial. Councillor Skender, Councillor Fuller. Councillors, is there any debate on this item? Being no debate,
I just want to make a comment, sir, as to this is a budget reallocation. The money's already been allocated, and it's done for separate budget items as per the schedule to approve that. However, I know with natural disasters and flooding, to me, flooding is not a natural disaster. It has to be really the cycles of water flowing rivers is predictable. It's been going on since the days of the Pharaohs and Nile. You manage flood waters, and this is a step towards managing the flood waters. It must be managed, and this is a step towards managing it. To sit there decade after decade and just copper hiding and refix it, to me, is unacceptable. This is a very, very positive, extremely important motion. Thank you.
thank you, Councillor Fuller. With that, all those in favour? Aye. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Councillor back to the index. And I've already asked this for a long time. Thank you. But applications for leave without still having those. Motions of which previous notes have been given. None. Questions from members without notice. Is there any questions, Councillor? Item 11, urgent business approved by the presiding member or by decision of the council. I don't have any urgent business. Is there any urgent business? Thank you. Matters of which for which the meeting will be closed to members of the public. There is none. With that, the date of the next meeting will be Tuesday, the 28th of June 2020 in Council Chamber in Carnarvon. Mr. Berry, I hope you enjoyed your last council meeting with the Shire of Carnarvon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for attending, and with that I'll close the meeting.
Now the meeting's closed.
and everybody's saying, yeah, can I ask a couple of questions on behalf of the committee or in my own interest, just while we, instead of over a cup of tea, we have a fiscal and that sort of thing.